Are there beings from another dimension hunting us? And could this be why some of the missing 411 go missing? There is a type of tall, thin, hairy humanoids that seem to hunt humans, and they seem to be coming from another reality. In the fall of 1980, I ran a small business as a construction contractor in Eugene, Oregon. During the slow times and in-between jobs, I would don my backpack and hiking boots and disappear into the peaceful mountains for weeks at a time, enjoying the peaceful solitude of the long hikes. At that time, I was single and didn't answer to anybody, so I was free to do what I wanted when I wanted. On the trip in question, I decided to hike the Old Malala Indian Trail that followed the ridge from the tops of Saddle Blanket Mountain to Oak Ridge, one of the Native Americans' favorite summer camps and trading centers. It was a beautiful August day. 2 days into the hike, I expected to be gone at least 2 weeks, when literally, out of the blue, the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me in my entire life occurred. It would change my perspective on reality forever. I was walking along the trail, enjoying the strong breeze and bright sunshine, when, in the middle of a step, everything around me started to turn gray and blurry. The only way I could describe it was as if suddenly I was looking through someone else's prescription sunglasses. I finished the step and started another. Every inch I moved forward, the darkness increased and the gray blurring turned into a jumble of shapes that made no sense. I then seemed to pass a barrier and everything started to return back into focus. When my foot reached the ground on the second step, everything around me had changed. Day had turned into night and there was no wind. All the Douglas fir and pine trees had been replaced with thick jungle-like growth. The cool, thin mountain air was replaced with humid, thick air. There were no stars in the sky, but there was a diffused light that let me see everything clearly. However, I couldn't tell what the light source was. As often happens when the human body receives a massive dose of adrenaline, the entire incident appeared like it was in slow motion, and even though I was only there for a second or two, I had time to observe my surroundings. The silence was broken by a continuous high-pitched kneeing sound, and I was nearly overwhelmed with a sense of fear and danger. My momentum caused me to take one more step before stopping in my tracks. It was at this point I heard a whisper, "Gotcha," over my right shoulder. I couldn't tell if I heard it with my ears or if it was inside my head. The word wasn't directed at me, but something said the word quietly to itself. I was so terrified I actually felt my heart stop for a moment. That whispered word is what saved me. I opened my mouth and gasped in a huge gush of thick air and recoiled backwards in the same footsteps I had entered wherever I was. As I threw myself backwards, I looked over my right shoulder. A dark-colored, hairy right hand and arm was reaching for my throat and shoulder. The hand had a pale ivory spade-shaped fingernails. The nails looked clean and almost had a manicured look to them. The thumb was placed lower towards the wrist on the hand than a human's is. Both hand and arm were thin and powerful looking, and both were covered with a thick, coarse black hair. I got a good look at it because the thumbnail grazed my neck, but it didn't graze the skin. As I continued backwards, the hand clutched where my neck had been a split second before, and it seemed to fade off into the distance as I returned through the portal. I took 2 more steps backwards, and everything reversed itself from what had just happened. The world around me became lighter, the fir and pines gradually came back into view, and by my 3rd step, I was back on Saddle Blanket Mountain. I continued to move backwards in terror, and as I did, I observed that where I had just come from was a shimmering oval portal in the air, about the size of a large door. The woods behind it looked like it was underwater. By the 5th backward step, the shimmering area seemed to evaporate and everything was back to normal. By then, my lungs had nearly burst from the volume of air I had inhaled during the huge gasp I had just taken. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline surge. I spun around and ran back down the trail as fast as my legs could carry me, and I didn't stop until I reached my truck. I was nearly 2 days getting to that place and about 3 hours getting back. On my way home, I was absolutely horrified at the thought of what would happen if I were to drive my truck into something like that. It had been a trap, pure and simple. Whatever it was that tried to kill me somehow kept the portal hidden from me on the way in, and I actually didn't see it until I was back out again. I had terrible nightmares for years, still hadn't come to grips with what had happened. My fingers are trembling and the hair is standing up on the nape of my neck as I write this. This story kind of reminds me of the video I did on Real Goblins, where the boy saw a little goblin-looking thing that jumped into a portal that opened and closed before it, and he said it was kind of had a weird light coming out of it. And if you think about it, on this story, he said it was shimmering, so you could interpret that as kind of like having a light. So whatever these things are able to open portals like this, for some reason the portals emanate light. Now, are these things beings from another dimension? And when I say dimension, I don't mean beings that are interdimensional. I mean they learn to open a hole or a portal. They're three-dimensional like us. They're not like 5D beings like some people think. And they learn to open holes to other realities and travel between planes of existence, like 3D, 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 3D. There's multiple 3D universes with different beings. I'm not sure if the next story matches in this description of the tall hairy man, but it seems to come close. Back in the winter of 2001, my youngest son and I were on our way back from Boise, Idaho to Mumford, Oregon. We had taken a car trailer to his old place in Boise in order to haul his non-running Jeep to his new place in Medford. We hit an area of heavy snow in the southern Cascades at around 2 a.m. It took 45 minutes or so to get down the mountain. We had, of course, been drinking coffee to stay alert. About 25 miles west of the pass, it became obvious that the last few quarts of coffee had to be drained. We stopped at a wide part of the road near a summer tourist haunt, deserted in winter. There is a gas station and ice cream joint on the west side of the road, closed this time of year, and no town or settlement within 30 miles. This is tall timber country and unsettled. Across the road is a small parking area for the ice cream joint. It is paved and about 200 feet wide and 80 feet deep. I pulled in, and as I stepped out with my .45 on my hip, it occurred to me in a flash that grabbing my .590 Mossy would be good. As we walked to the far end of the area, well off the road, the hair on the arms and the back of my neck stood on end. The area directly to our front was open with a depth of 50 yards and a width of 100 yards. The night was clear and cold, 8 to 10 inches of snow on the ground, and with the moon almost full so we could see quite well. While standing and taking a leak with my son, about 15 feet to my right I saw, as if springing from the earth in front of us, across the open area, 10 to 12 creatures moving rapidly back and forth in a sort of thatched weave pattern. These things, not human men, were close to 7 foot tall, thin, bipedal, with long arms, medium-length gray fur, and damn fast on their feet. I brought the shotgun up and slid the safety off as my son was drawing his .45. I don't know if I could adequately explain the overwhelming feeling of menace, but here goes. I had been operating on pure instinct since I had stepped from the pickup. The rotten feeling hit me a split second before the things arrived. The feeling, instinct, was that we were prey, subject to a very bad death and to be slaughtered and eaten. Not a logical process, but a gut feeling, massively overwhelming. As they were moving around in front of us, more appeared and mixed among them, all the while running about fast in front of us. My son and I were backing towards a truck. I would not present my back to them, and some of them peeled off to the right and left in encirclement movement. They were rolling in fast from the sides now. I could smell and feel their presence. We got to the truck, loaded on adrenaline and ready to kill, as we both knew we were in grave danger. We piled into the truck, locked the doors. I had keys out and ready as my butt neared the seat. I had the engine lit and the transmission in gear, and gas pedal mashed in one quick motion. Adrenaline is great stuff. As we fled, yes, fled, something very close by let out an undulating scream of rage and pain. I believe one or more of the group had gotten really close to us in their pursuit, and I ran over the foot of one of them. Yeah, they were that close. We rolled onto the highway, and I told my son to watch the bed of the pickup as well as the trailer. He was already indexed to the rear with his shotgun. We hauled ass for at least 20 minutes before the feeling of grave danger started to abate. The feeling that nailed both of us, as we discussed soon afterwards, was one of being prey and soon to be slaughtered and eaten. I am not easily led, and neither believe or disbelieve all the Bigfoot, ghost, and werewolf stuff. In fact, I'm skeptical. My son was speaking with a coworker about 6 months later who grew up in Prospect, Oregon, about 30 miles south of Union Creek, where the incident took place. He asked Jake if he had ever heard of any strange going-ons in that area. Jake went ashy white and pretty much retold the above tale. He said to avoid that place at night. A family friend, a 25-year-old retired cop, not given to flights of fancy and an excellent observer, had a tale very similar from a year before. I told my wife of this event, and of course, she looked at me in the beginning as though I had developed a third eyeball in the center of my forehead. That was from shock. She did believe me, but did not wish to hear any details. She said the tale gave her chills. Me too. As I write this, the hair on the back of my forearms is sticking up. I have not gone back to explore. It would not without a large group of shotgun and flamethrower-equipped men with me. My son and I are both sane, sober people, and not taken to hysteria. We were very wide awake as things transpired. We saw and smelled what was there. As a sidebar, neither of us heard footfalls from the creatures. They were silent until I heard one as we were getting the hell out of there. To my knowledge, and I have researched, there is nothing that matches these creatures, unless one considers old legends and folktales of were-creatures. To conclude, I had to fall back on Elmer Keith's famous line, "Hell, I was there." The thing about this story that made me think they were interdimensional beings was that he saw them rise out of the ground. Now, I've talked to other people who've seen little people and other types of beings like Bigfoot, and they say they rise out of the ground like an elevator or something coming straight out of the earth. One of my friends was attacked by skinwalkers or dogmen, and he said when they came to him, it was like a flat plain in the prairie in the Navajo reservation, and two of them rose straight out of the ground. And if these things are traveling the same way, who's to say they're not coming through a portal in the ground, just like the first story? And the description was similar to the first story. The first story only described a hand, but it was a thin, strong, wiry hand. If these things were Bigfoot, they would be bulky and thick unless they're like adolescent Bigfoot. But I don't think that's the case, because when people describe a Sasquatch hand, the thumb doesn't go down the wrist like in the story here. It sounded more like an ape-style type of hand. And the thinness reminds me of the first story. So, the question remains, are these things from another realm or another dimension? And are they hunting humans? It seems pretty clear to me that they're trying to capture people for some reason, and it is probably to eat them. So, along with the Fae, the Bigfoot, and other beings like this, they seem to be from other realities. If you study Norse mythology, they talk of 9 realms, of 9 worlds, and they say that there's a realm of elves, and the elves know how to do magic. There's little people, there's the dwarves, the little people that live underground. In my next video, I'm going to delve deeper into the interdimensional being hypothesis. Remember, if you liked the video, thumbs up and subscribe. It helps the channel grow.